For this level, we're looking at what is money. So in your country, you need to come up with some kind of money. So when we look at what can be money in our country, we have to look at what the purpose of money is. So money has three purposes. It must be a medium of exchange, a store of wealth, and a unit of account. What we mean by medium of exchange is that when you go to the grocery store to buy your groceries, that the money you give them is accepted as payment for those goods. So in order to be considered money, businesses, people have to accept that money in exchange for goods and services. The second purpose of money is it needs to be a store of wealth. So it needs to be a way for you to accumulate wealth. That is, you hold on to it, you get more of it, and that enables you to buy more in the future. When we talk about wealth, we're talking about the difference between your assets and your liabilities. So for example, if you go and you buy a house, okay, there's the value of the house minus how much you still owe on it. So wealth is the difference between the value of the asset and what you still owe, the liability. So you need a way to accumulate wealth. Well, let's think about a credit card. Is a credit card money? Well, it's a medium of exchange. If you go to Tim Hortons and you tap your credit card to buy a donut and a coffee, it's accepted as payment of goods and services. But it's not a store of wealth. If I have 10 credit cards, it doesn't mean I have more money and can buy more stuff later. Right? Credit cards are just an IOU that says I'll pay you back later. So credit cards aren't money. Money needs to be a medium of exchange, so accepted, and it needs to be a way for us to accumulate our wealth or get more and more of it so that we can buy more and more things later. We also need our money to be a unit of account. That is, we need to be able to know how much things cost. And so money helps us compare the value of two different items. So for example, if you want to buy a Snickers bar, all right, you're paying, let's say, $1.50. We know how much the Snickers bar is worth. So we know the value of it. It's a unit of account. And when it comes to buying a truck, if a truck is $60,000, we know how much the truck is worth. And because we know that the truck is $60,000 and the Snickers is $1.50, we can compare the values of a Snickers to a truck. So money helps us determine the value of goods compared to other goods. So any type of money we choose must be accepted for payment. We must be able to accumulate more of it so we can buy more things later, and it needs to help us understand how much things are worth comparatively. If we don't use money, if let's say we have a barter system, so we trade good for goods, then they may be accepted as a medium of exchange, but it's difficult to store your wealth if those goods you're exchanging go bad, right? So let's say that you have a chicken farm and you produce lots of eggs. Well, you might be able to trade your eggs for other goods. Okay, trade your eggs for bread or for a chair. But it's hard to store your wealth because you can't just hang on to your eggs and have more eggs, and that allows you to trade for more stuff 2 years from now because your eggs go bad. Now the other challenge is that if we're using a barter system, determining the value of goods. So what if you can trade a basket of eggs for a Snickers bar? All right, so we know the value of a Snickers bar in terms of eggs. But what if you want a truck? Well, if you want a truck and the person who's selling the truck doesn't want eggs, do you trade your eggs for Snickers bars and trade Snickers bars for cows and cows for trucks? How do you know how much the truck is worth if you have to convert your eggs to Snickers bars, your Snickers bars to cows, your cows to trucks? How many eggs does it take to buy a cow, to buy a truck? So it can be difficult to determine the value of goods without money if we have simply a barter system. So money allows us to know how much things are worth compared to each other, as well as people accept it for goods and services, and it's a way for us to accumulate wealth. So as we're deciding then what should be our money in our economy, there are a number of characteristics that we need our money to have. The first is that people accept it, right? If we're going to have money be a medium of exchange, people have to take it in exchange for goods and services. So it has to be acceptable. And related to that, it has to be easily recognized, because if people look at it and don't know it's money, then they're not going to accept it. Okay? We also need our money to be durable. That is, it needs to be long-lasting. What if we lived in an economy where tomatoes were money? Okay? Well, if tomatoes were money, we would need giant refrigerators to store our wealth. And the problem is that, after a couple months, your money's worthless because all your tomatoes have rotted. So we need some kind of money that will last, that'll be durable. And if you think about Canadian money, in the past decade, we have switched from money made of cotton to money made of plastic. Well, one of the reasons we switched to money made of plastic is because it lasts 2.5 times longer than the money that's made of cotton, so it's more durable. We also need our money to be portable. Okay, so if tomatoes are money, then the problem is if you want to go and buy a Snickers bar, then you're going to need a handful of tomatoes. Well, what if you want to buy a truck? Then you're going to need trucks full of tomatoes to buy a truck. So the problem is we need our money to be portable. We need to be able to carry it around in small amounts and in large amounts. You shouldn't have to have a truck to carry your money to go buy a truck. We also need our money to be divisible. So what if cows were money? If cows are money and you wanted to buy a Snickers bar, then what do? Do you shave off part of the cow to buy the Snickers bar? Well, if you shave off part of the cow, then the problem is the rest of the cow is no good anymore, right? It's not a cow, it's now a dead animal. So we need a way to divide up our money so that you can buy things that are a fraction of the amount of money you have, right? You can't buy something with 1,000th of a car or cow. You need something that has small denominations as well as large denominations. So if we look at our money, for example, we have $50 and $100 bills. We also have loonies and nickels. And so we can buy things that are expensive and things that are not expensive. We also need our money to be homogeneous or homogeneous. And that is, we need everything that's worth $1 to look the same, and everything that's worth $10 to look the same. Because what if they don't? What if your $10 bills are all different, or your loonies are all different? Well, let's go back to our example where cows are money. Well, you're going to buy a truck, and you've brought in a bunch of cows to buy the truck, and you have a red cow and a blue cow and a white cow. And you start pushing cows off your truck to buy this new truck. Well, what if the person who's selling you the truck says, "Ooh, I don't want blue cows. Blue cows are ugly." Well, if they don't want the blue cow, then the blue cow is no longer worth the same as the red cow or the white cow. And if your money is going to be the same denomination, so if $100 is going to be worth $100, then you need people to not have a preference as to which $100 bill they get. So we need our money to be essentially everything that's worth the same amount needs to look the same so that in terms of the value to the user, or the person you're giving the money to in exchange for goods and services, that they don't have a preference of one item of another. Otherwise, your money is no longer worth the same amount. So it needs to be homogeneous. Now, Do we have different designs on quarters? Do we have loonies that have poppies in the center periodically? When we're making them homogeneous, they're not different enough that people ascribe a different value to one over the other. There is a risk when you start to have unique coins that people will hold on to them and not spend them because they value them differently. So if you want your money to be spent and used and stimulate the economy, then it needs to be the fact that everything that is worth $1 looks essentially the same so that everyone values it worth $1. All right, we said that our money needs to be easily recognized, and that's because if you want people to accept it, then it needs to be identifiable as money and having a specific value. To maintain the value of our money, we need our money to not be easily copied, right? Let's say you go home, you whip out the printer, and you just print yourself a couple $100 bills. Well, if we can all easily print $100 bills, then what happens to the value of that money, right? It loses its value, and it's no longer going to buy $100 worth of stuff because anybody can just make their own. So we need money that can't easily be duplicated so that we can maintain its value. So what we have now is a lot of counterfeit measures in our currency. Okay? So if you look at our plastic money, it's got holograms in it, it's got see-through things in it. If you shine a light and a little speck on the money, it actually will project a little design that has, like if it's a $10 bill, that has little 10s in it. So there's all of these counterfeit measures that are made so that our money is not easily copied. In fact, Canada has one of the most counterfeited currencies in the entire world. Lastly, when it comes to characteristics of money, we need our money to be controlled by a central authority. So we have the Bank of Canada. The US has the Federal Reserve. Okay. Countries that have their own currency have some kind of central bank. And you need the central authority to make sure that there's enough money in circulation, but not too much money in circulation. If there's too much money in circulation, for example, we all just photocopy our own money, then it no longer maintains its value, right? A $100 bill doesn't buy $100 worth of stuff. So we need one central authority who's responsible for the money supply to keep an eye on the amount of money in circulation. If it's too much, then then your $100 bill doesn't buy $100 worth of stuff. We get inflation or hyperinflation, and now we need wheelbarrows full of money to buy the same goods because our currency, our money, has lost its value. On the other end, you need the central authority, like the Bank of Canada, to make sure there's enough money in circulation. Because if there's not enough money in circulation, then we don't buy things. Businesses can't afford to pay their workers. And so it can really hurt the economy. Your economy can essentially crash to a halt if there's not enough money in circulation for all the day-to-day transactions that make our economy run. So when it comes to characteristics of money, as you're deciding what should be money in your economy, it needs to be something that's acceptable. It needs to be something that lasts or is durable. It needs to be something that people can carry around, portable. It needs to be something that's divisible, so we can buy small amounts of things and large amounts of things. It needs to be homogeneous so that it has the same value. It needs to be easily recognized so people know it's money and will spend it and accept it. It needs to be not easily copied and controlled by a central authority so that it can maintain its value. When we talk about maintaining its value, part of the reason that we are willing to get paid in Canadian dollars and go to stores and buy things in Canadian dollars is because we have faith or trust that a year from now, 10 years from now, that money will be accepted by others and will allow us to buy things. When your money is not easily copied and controlled by a central authority, then that creates faith or trust in the system that the money will have value now and will have value in the future. As we are designing our money, we should look at one more thing. That is, what are we going to use for that money? So we know what purposes our money needs to have. We know what characteristics our money needs to have. But now as we're choosing our money, we need to decide, are we going to use, say, pieces of gold or silver as our money? Or are we going to print plastic or cotton bills? Well, when we look at the types of money, we need to decide whether we're going to have commodity money or whether it's going to be what we call fiat money. Commodity money is money that is also a good or raw material, so it has value separate from being money. If you want to look at some historic examples of commodity money, gold is commodity money. If you go back to Sri Lanka in 1742, they used to use cowrie shells. Those are those real big giant shells. So shells have been commodity money. If you go back to before Canada was a country, we used beaver pellets as money. We use cigarettes as money. So can you think of an example of commodity money used today in Canada? So where would they still accept commodity money? Because when you go to the grocery store, right, they're not going to accept shells or gold or beaver pelts in exchange for your lean cuisine. So where is it that we still accept commodity money? Well, if you think about prison, for example, in prison you can pay for goods and services with things like cigarettes. And so you can see an example where we're still using commodity money. Most countries today use fiat money. Fiat money is money that has no separate value. It is money because the government says it's money. So we have some central authority, our bank, the Bank of Canada, that says this is money and it has value. So if we look at our plastic money, or you look at the US's cotton money, the actual value of the money is only a couple cents. So the amount to make it, right, if we look at a $10 bill, it's not worth $10 in terms of the cost to make it. It's only worth $10 because the government says it's worth $10. So this is what is called fiat money. So we look at fiat money in Canada today. We're looking at our loonie, our toonie. We're looking at our banknotes. Okay, that's our plastic money, like the $10 bill, the $20 bill, and so on. Well, we first introduced fiat money in Canada in 1841, and that was the Canadian pound. So if you're creating a country, you need to decide what is your money. Your money needs to serve three purposes. What were those three purposes? Medium of exchange, a store of wealth, and a unit of account. Your money needs to have certain characteristics, like divisible and durable and acceptable. And you also need to choose, is your money going to be commodity money, so it has value as something else, or is it fiat money? Challenge with commodity money, of course, is that if it has value as something else, and we use gold as money, well, gold can also be jewelry, and so you're competing for those resources to use for money, whereas our fiat money only has value as money. The risk with fiat money, however, is that it is only worth anything if there is trust in the government or central bank that says it's worth anything.